first of all, what's very clear and what's really great to see in the Bitcoin community is people changing their minds when they're presented with new information. That would include me. So I was initially very skeptical of stablecoins for years, actually, until I started to actually, in my work, when I'm interviewing and doing research as a journalist, like learning about Bitcoin adoption, I just kept seeing stablecoin, especially Tether. I just kept seeing Tether like mentioned alongside Bitcoin, or mentioned as the way people would get Bitcoin, or mentioned as, in some cases, even more desirable than Bitcoin. And it's impossible to deny. I mean, that Tether is an important humanitarian tool, which is kind of crazy to think about, because I think it's completely legitimate to have questions about how it's backed and how it's issued. I mean, it's opaque and sketchy, but the reality is that it has lasted a lot longer than people thought, and has held its peg a lot more strongly than people thought, and has gotten bigger than anyone would ever think. I mean, I mean, you're talking about, I mean, what is Tether's market cap now? It's 100 billion or something?
Yeah, at least tens of billions, like maybe 100. It's enormous.
Yeah, let's see. It's well, the total stablecoin market cap is 150 billion. So Tether is 80 billion right as of today, and then USDC, and then they make up like 90% of the market. But like the point is that stablecoins are clearly in demand by people around the world who don't have U.S. bank accounts, who, you know, can't get access to dollars, to digital dollars. So it's been good to see over the last 6 to 8 months, like it seems like kind of obvious that the Bitcoin community is like, okay, this is actually very important. Like, as much as we all love Bitcoin and understand the value inherent to a completely different monetary system, and like we know where we're going with that eventually, but for now, I mean, people need dollars. So it's good to see like that we have been able, some of us have been able to change our mind on that and then say, okay, this is actually an important feature to add to the ecosystem. Now there's like two ways to do it that I can see. One is through assets and one is through contracts. So assets, yeah, I mean, there are different people working on the idea of bringing the Tether asset either to Lightning or like having essentially a Lightning-like network, you know, in Tether, essentially. So there's different ways of doing that. But there's pros and cons to that, right? Like, obviously, if you can download a FOSS wallet and start using basically a Lightning network to move tethers around, I mean, that's great. That's a great upgrade for people. However, you know, that's still an asset that can be frozen, blacklisted, etc., right? So, you know, this bounty was really geared towards, you know, and we intentionally left it a little vague. You know, we'll see. You know, at the end of the day, if someone has figured out a way to do that with tethers that may qualify, the OpenSats board will be responsible for everything. They have to have a unanimous decision on these submissions. So that way it's like, it's not us or Strike deciding, but you know, an independent board figuring this out. But yeah, you could take the asset route, but you know, certainly the bounty was designed to inspire thinking around the contract route. Because then it's just way more friendly for like the people that need these the access to dollars in difficult places. Like you do the asset route, you're creating an asset, and you're going to have all kinds of regulation risk, right? And you know, you're going to have freezing, threats of freezing, confiscation, stuff like that. It's just, it is what it is when you create a financial asset, right? So, you know, is it going to help people in Palestine or in Iran or in Venezuela? I don't know. Like USDC can't, right? So, and even Tether blocks stuff, certain things. So the asset approach I think is going to be great. I'm excited. I think it's really cool. I'm excited to see the Tether Lightning stuff happen this year. I think that'll be interesting. But, you know, we need something a little better than that. Like, and I think that it is starting to become at least conceptually possible, technically possible. I'm not, to have a contract for difference based approach.
Can you explain to listeners like a bit about how a contract?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this would be done using DLCs and basically price oracles. So it would be borrowing a lot from what's been already done in the Ethereum-based DeFi community, which has been done, for years at huge scale. So it's not like anything that new from the concept side of it. But it's essentially that you have two parties, and these two parties can be part of a much larger liquidity pool of many, many parties. And some of these parties are short and some of these parties are long, in an agreement that has some sort of time duration. And the people who are short get exposure. Well, you can set it up however you want, but the idea is, in this particular arrangement, you would ideally enter into your wallet and you would choose to peg a certain amount of your Bitcoin via Lightning into a contract, which would give you short exposure to this arrangement. So you'd essentially be taking the dollar side, okay? And the idea is, from a UX perspective, would be that the user would go into their Moon wallet or Blue wallet or whatever and just be like, I'm going to peg 40% of what's in here to the dollar. And the challenge for the devs and the engineers, of course, is to figure out how to do that on the back end, which is no small feat. I mean, I know some teams have been working on this for years. And again, there's an asset approach and a contract approach. But as far as the contract approach goes, the idea, again, is you'd have this like liquidity pool of people. Some of them are short, some of them are long. And there's a price oracle. And, the price oracle takes the, exchange rate, from the top 5 to 10 exchanges or something like that. There's trust that's involved, certainly, but it can be not a lot of trust, right? You can essentially reduce this, if it's engineered properly, to trusting the price oracle, and that's about it. And I think that is something that a lot of people are going to be okay with. I mean, the other option is going to be an asset approach, right? Where you're going to be trusting the asset issuer, right? So, at the end of the day, are you going to be trusting a Tether type asset issuer to make sure that they're not going to be committing fraud or rehypothecating or whatever they're doing with these assets and what's backing them, right? Or are you going to be trusting a smart contract, right? That is pulling a price feed from somewhere, or an average of price feeds from 10 places or something like that. People are going to have to make decisions, and we're just going to have to see how this goes. But I think we see development hopefully in both areas. I know that the asset side is going to be tricky for people who live in difficult political places. And if you have the ability to download an open source Bitcoin wallet, and you can just peg some of that to dollars via a smart contract, there's no stopping that, man. Yeah. I mean, I have been quite critical of what's happened in DeFi for a lot of different reasons. But this concept is a good one, and is going to be borrowed into Lightning, hopefully, is the idea. So that's sort of the idea behind it. I don't know whether the asset approach, basically tethers on Lightning, or the contract approach is the one that takes the bounty. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if it'll be taken before the deadline of the end of the year. It's very ambitious. As I talked with Strike, we put these things together. We knew that someone's going to claim the Bolt 12 one pretty soon. That one's pretty easy, obviously. And probably we think someone will claim the Chomian Mint as well. But this one seems like the toughest one to actually implement and have at scale.